Welcome to Level Up, the Career Playbook podcast, or as I like to call it, How to Be Better at Your Job. I am your host, Brian Bell, and I am so glad you're back again, tuning in wherever you are today. This podcast, it's powered by Mamba HR, a tool that my co-founder, Kelly, and myself have been building in the background. We want to bring the power of an HR business partner right into your pocket. The name Mamba in Mamba HR, that's inspired by the late, great Kobe Bryant and his legendary Mamba mentality. Kobe believed that greatness comes from falling in love with the process. It's a relentless preparation. It's constant improvement and a commitment to excellence. And that's the same spirit that drives this podcast. Look, we all want to be better, whether it's making smarter decisions, leading more effectively, or simply leveling up in our careers. But most advice out there, it's not real, or you just don't get it at all. It's impractical. That's why we're creating this podcast, to sit down with incredible people who've mastered their craft and can share actionable insights that make a real difference. Today's guest is someone I've had the privilege of working with in the past. I thought it was 15 years ago. It wasn't that long ago, but I've worked with him and I've seen him working in action. He's a true powerhouse. He's continuously elevated his game and helped others do the exact same. Sonny Huang is the director of strategy at Gong, where he's been shaping how other organizations across this planet use data to drive the best outcomes. Sonny's journey spans roles at Deloitte, like I said, Gong, and even co-owning the Click Studio. He's a leader that doesn't just talk about strategy. He lives it, from moneyballing data to creating frameworks that drive impact. And today, he's here to share how he thinks, how he works, and what you can take away to be the best at what you do. Sonny, it's been a long time. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Doing well. It's good to see you again.
Like I was saying before we hit record, I've been watching you on LinkedIn, and you honestly are probably one of top 2 or top 3 most influential people that I am following and I see on LinkedIn, and you're giving real insight and data. And it's like, I didn't know that Sonny's that dude right now. So I really appreciate you being here. And I really hope that people that are listening, you're going to get a lot from Sonny. And I remember just the little time they worked together, the impact you had. So I really appreciate you.
No, I'm happy to be here. They're being very nice. Wait, quick thing for your audience. One thing that just came up as you're describing when we first worked together at Bloomreach. Do you remember we had like a stipend that every employee got to like improve or like add to the office at Bloomreach? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So, do you remember what we bought together?
No.
Yeah, we took a little road trip and we got a basketball hoop.
Well, that's right. We did put the hoop together, and that was the greatest purchase of the entire company. To be honest with you. And I remember I went in the back and put it together with Paul Rooney.
That's right. Yeah, I think it was like week 2 at Bloomreach.
We got the hoop.
That we got the hoop.
That was the greatest thing that was bought for the
awesome.
entire company.
Yeah,
besides maybe the grill.
Just that's true. The grill came before me.
We did that. Yeah. See, I love that. I love that for us. The other thing I wanted to start with as well is go Duke, go Blue Devils. I know you're happy to hear that, right?
We're starting on a really bad foot. I mean, also I respect Kobe. I'm a LeBron guy. So like we're on 2 bad foot.
Jesus, this is going to be a rough podcast, dude.
I know.
All right, whatever. All right, you're a Tar Heel fan, whatever. All right, let's start from the very beginning. Sonny, I know you're humble, but who are you? And what do you do? What is your job? Why does it matter to business? Give us the lowdown of who you are and why what you do matters.
Yeah. I think I've been lucky enough to work at a company where, one, the tool that we sell, the product we sell, helps me on a daily basis. And then secondarily, I think we're out on a frontier of like new data that lives outside CRM. So like CRM's data, as we all know, is manually inputted. There's bias. It's not always captured. Gong, the product collects is like real-time go-to-market interactions, right? Across calls and everything. And my suspicion was that, hey, I think there's gold to mine out of this and there's not a lot of focus on it. And when I first joined Gong, I was actually a CSM. I was in customer success. The one thing I noticed more and more is that customers wanted us to be in their data to tell them about their business using Gong data, which, when we first started, we were like, let's not be in our customer data because that's their data. And then customers were like, no, please tell us what's going on because you guys have all the data. And then that evolved into thinking, hey, we don't do this for us at our own company. So I started doing that for
dog-fooding it.
Exactly. It gets their own data. And then, little things became big things. And now I lead a team that does that. We intake business challenges from other leaders in the business. And instead of going to the CRM, we interrogate the real conversational interaction data to give you insights on like how you can be better at selling, how teams get better at selling like multi-year deals, or increasing retention, all these different things. So that's what I do. And I think the reason why I even know about it is because I was discovering things about Gong in our business. And I was thinking, man, Gong is probably not unlike other companies. Other companies where I benefit from the same insights that we have. I was like, why not share just as a byproduct of all the things that I'm doing anyways? So that's probably why we're here today.
We're going to get into the bottom of this, but I think there's going to be a lot of jewels. Like you said, you started as a CSM and now you're running strategy. And every single day, you're giving so many insights that help any business, no matter the size. You can take jewels from that. If you're in sales or in the customer side or just wherever you are in the business, I learn stuff and I'm in HR and I'm like, I'm going to take that to my people and I hope that they're paying attention. So your journey to go from where you started, and let's talk about that. So this is a sports themed podcast. We have a couple different segments. The first one, of course, is sports related as well. It's called the pregame. So we're going to go back to your foundational years or early influences, and then we'll get to like how to make these pivots. But did you see yourself here? Let's go back to maybe high school, college. Did you see yourself in this type of role? How did this happen? How do you go from being the man in high school to here? Like, it seems like an incredible journey and transformation.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was the man in high school. I was a person in high school, but
Humble.
yeah, I think if I asked my high school self, I don't think he'd be too surprised, mainly because I had no conception of what I wanted to be when I grew up. It's a reason why I chose consulting out of college, because it's a big problem when you like, I can't commit to something long enough because I'm always a little fearful that I might invest in it and then lose interest in it and then feel like I've over specialized. So I was thinking, if I keep doing this, I got to have some real skills that I can actually be very ubiquitous and be versatile across a bunch of different things. So consulting was really interesting in that respect, where I did the Deloitte business analyst rotational program, which they guaranteed that you would see 3 different industries and 3 different service lines within the 2 years I were there.
Yeah.
So I thought that was perfect. And I actually had a friend who was like I had a lot of friends who were very strong sense of what they want to do when they were in college. And they were like, hey, you're just chose another 2 years of not committing. I was like, yeah, that's true. But I think I'm going to try to pick up some skill sets along the way. And I think what you get really good at when you're a consultant is you basically get airdropped into new contexts, new companies, new dynamics, new industries. You got to learn things really quickly. You got to be really adaptable. And then I think I'm not using this term the right way, but bottom line thinking. You have to kind of understand how to get to the bottom line of what people care about, what they need, and be able to be impactful in that way really quickly. And I think that's one that was sharpened through at least Deloitte, and then even carrying that over to Plumrich.
Yeah, that's my question, because a lot of the best people I've worked with that generally don't have a ton of experience in the specific field that they're working in, but they come from consulting. Are you learning specific framework and skill sets when these consultants? Are they sitting down saying, this is how you attack a problem, this is how you think about change? Are they teaching a college course, or is it just because you're getting thrown in and you have to learn quickly, you just figure it out on your own? Why are people that are consultants so successful?
Yeah, this question's so funny because I think back on the actual training that I got to become okay at consulting, and it's a really it's a beautiful scheme that consulting firms do. So for you to interview at consulting, they make you do case interviews. Nobody teaches you how to do case interviews, but you learn to basically think like a consultant in the interview process. They're basically vetting how good are you going to be as a consultant based on how you interview. So one of the things they teach, or you have to learn as part of case interviews, is me-see thinking. So like mutually exclusive, comprehensive, exhaustive, which basically means like you try to put challenges and different things into buckets and address things very, very categorically. So the ability to actually encounter a problem and say, all right, with this problem, it's probably these 3 things. Let me go bucket by bucket, try to understand what's going on and maybe have a solution against. That's a fairly good foundational way to organize your thinking. And then from there, you can start building frameworks. And that's really what frameworks is. It's just like building, like, can you chunk it out into component parts, break a problem down to component parts, and then apply your own problem solving to each of these. And I think the nuance comes in that how good are you actually in breaking down a problem into the parts that actually matter.
And that's something that you learned at Deloitte. It sounds like something you would learn at college. And the reason why I'm asking this is for people that it doesn't matter if you're in school or in college now, or you're 45 years old and you're thinking about switching your career. It almost sounds like being a consultant is actually a really good career move, especially for people that are not quite sure what they're doing. Are you getting this stuff from college, or do you really feel like you're picking up a lot of this from your 2 years of doing the consulting? I'm just really trying to feel like, where was the rubber meeting the road at?
Yeah, I think you sharpen it when you're a consultant, but like it's really, you might have some basic foundational skill sets in that realm anyways. And then as you get ready for the interview process, you really get good at, okay, this is the problem. How can I break it down? And how do I actually make reasonable assumptions against each of this and then apply solutions to it? I mean, it's hard. I mean, revisionist history is going to be not truthful here. I want to say I've always thought like this, but probably there was a lot of training. I mean, I'll be honest. I was really late to deciding I wanted to do consulting, which is on a meta basis is really funny because I couldn't even commit to the thing that would give me a lot of optionality. So I basically like put myself through a boot camp in a month and just got really hip to that way of thinking. But I don't want to credit consultant that way of thinking period, because I know a lot of others probably think the same way. But I do know like that was part of the process.
It's just very interesting because, like I said, a lot of people that I work with that are just tight with how they communicate, how they attack problems. There is that consultant background. And so I think what you said, I think you called it, was it MISI?
MISI, yeah.
MISI. So if you're watching or listening, I can Google MISI thinking or MISI framework, or what is it?
Yeah, I don't know what that. Just
look up MISI and we'll be able to see.
Yeah, it'll come up. I don't know what the framework. I'm gonna botch a lot of like actual terms here, but
that doesn't matter. Well, we can Google it and figure it out. But the basics of what you're talking about makes sense.
Will come up.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about school. So you were at Tar Heel, went to UNC, school in Hong Kong, school in Copenhagen, right? So you were a global kid going to all these different places for learning, for education. How do you think that shows up in how you do your jobs today? And even, I mean, us working, almost 10 years ago at Bloomreach, you came in really sharp. And especially now, how do you think that global influence has helped you? Because I want people listening to understand that having that global influence does matter. And so how did it shape you?
Yeah, biggest thing I got from, so I did 2 semesters abroad. I did a semester in Chinese University of Hong Kong and then 1 semester in Copenhagen Business School. And the experience I got, the biggest thing I got from that is like, you realize how little you know of the world and how important cultural differences are. Like, it sounds very cliche, but when I look back on my experiences going from consulting into which the demographics are different, and then from Bloomreach to Gong, demographics being very different there, you realize business is communication and communication is very cultural. So understanding the styles of where people come from and understanding the nuances there and like not assuming poor intention, which is the difference in culture, has been massive. And I think if you know a little bit, if you show a little bit of appreciation for their culture, it goes a long way. I mean, people don't expect you to be like culturally fluent in everything context they're in, but like demonstrating that you have an eagerness to learn and you have appreciation for their culture, it goes a long way. Because I mean, ultimately, like business, we're just people trying to talk to each other, trying to solve problems and trying to do our best. To connect on that level versus this is the way I speak because I come from an American company, or like this is how I do business. It helps a lot, in my opinion.
Walk me through what that looks like. So you are, put yourself back at, you're a new employee, you're getting to know the business and the people. What are you doing intentionally to make sure people see you trying to understand their culture? Like, is there an active thing that you're doing to respect other cultures and other places that you're working?
Yeah, well, number one, trying to get people's names right. I try really hard there because I've suffered from a bad pronunciation of my last name my entire life.
That's why I had to ask you before we started.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I remember when I was younger, they would say Sonny, and I would just stick my hand up immediately because I don't want them to say my last name, and it haven't become a whole meme. But I try really hard. If I see a name I don't recognize or haven't have familiarity, I'll ask, hey, help me with your name. I want to make sure I say it correctly. And that, I think, goes a long way if they're, people are used to having their names butchered. And I think it really starts there. Like, that just shows, like, I'm leaning in because I want to respect and honor where you're coming from. And it just sets you on a good foot. But, I mean, one story that I have that was, like, really interesting to me is when I was in Denmark, we would arrange meetings with friends. And, I was with, like, 14 other Americans as part of the program. And, like, getting to places on time, it's a guideline. It's not like a requirement. You'll get there when you get there and you'll have a good time. And they'll usually carry over past it a lot of time. But I had some Danish friends, not very close ones, but like acquaintances I met there, where they would show up on the dot and then they would leave on the dot, which is funny because I think for Americans, we're like, well, leaving is definitely a suggestion. You don't have to leave because if you're having a good time, you don't want to commit to leaving. But the perspective I got from them is like, hey, you need to respect being on time because I'm committed to another thing. So really, they get more done in a day than Americans because they're just so, I think, like diligent about timelines.
Because we're going to show up late, first of all.
Yeah, we're going to show up late and then we're going to stay past the time, depending on how fun it is, right? For them, or for some of them, even if it's really fun, they're like, I got another thing I got to be at. I got to ride my bike there. I've already calculated the time it takes to get there. So that's a really small example of, wow, I now know this. And if I'm meeting with somebody from that part of the world, being on time is going to be really important. And, that extends, if you know, like for me, I know I grew up in Taiwan, so I know about Taiwanese culture. Like I know a lot of the things there. So being able to kind of try to connect the dots and try to make reasonable assumptions of what would be respectful for them helps a ton, I think.
And then you can cherry pick the great things that you've seen. So now, actually showing up on time makes sense. I know I went to YouTube to actually look at the pronunciation of your name. So for people out there, that's a really good gym. Understand how to pronounce people's names, and it's really not that hard. I went to YouTube, and they literally just kept giving the pronunciation. And then, of course, asking how things shows it. That's a really good call on something small, but it matters. All right, let's move on to the second segment. This is called the Playbook. We're going to talk about actual strategies for success. That sounds really buttoned up, but we're going to just dig a little bit deeper. All right, so in sports, we review game film. We lift weights. There's a regimen that you have to stay sharp. What do you think the equivalent is for you now, especially in strategy? What is your daily game film? What's your daily practice? How do you prepare? How do you get better?
I think there's two parts to it, and it depends on what you do more of. So I feel confident saying this because I think I've been in the ears of my friends a lot about this, which is try to record everything. I started doing this. I started training boxing back in 2017, and I started recording like my workouts, my spars, and I think it's terrible to watch at first because you're so bad. Actually, you don't even know you're bad when you first record. You're like, that move looks pretty slick. And then through the progression, because you're reviewing it and you're like, I think I could do better at that thing. You reviewing that game tape just makes you better. And then now the fun thing to do is compare where you are now against where you were. And that's like the most cringiest, funniest thing could probably be inflict upon yourself.
Yeah.
But I extended that to basically everything. I try to record as much as I can for anything I work on, trying to get better at. And, the most obvious example, which I've written about, is conversations. I just wrote a post about this, but I love telling the story because at Bloomreach, I thought I was really good on calls. I wasn't bad, but, the numbers are good. I was doing well. And then when I first got to Gong, I looked at the metrics of like the first probably like 15 calls that I did, and it was bad. Talk time was high. I interrupted. I just talked way too much. And then through that, you start picking out like, I don't like this. I want to improve on this. You start measuring stuff, and conversations as a concept was not something I thought you could improve on. But by recording it and forcing yourself on a weekly basis review that your game tape, you start to figure out how you can be better. And like, there's so many magical things that happen that when you record and you review, I think there's like this meta nature as well of the being observed. So if you know to be recording, you're going to naturally try to be better because you want that to compound and stack upon itself. So that's helped a ton. And the second thing, if you're not always engaging with customers, for me, I've invested in two skills. I went out and paid for it. One was public speaking. Got a speaking coach because in reviewing the game tape, I was like, man, there are moments.
You went and actually got a speaking coach there.
I got a speaking coach, yeah. Shout out Rebecca Martin. She's awesome. I did a course with her, and even if you're not bad, you learn a lot of great skill sets that set you up to be a great speaker.
Give me one or two things that you've learned from you said Rebecca Martin?
Rebecca Martin, yeah. So the biggest thing I learned from her that helps me a ton is good speaking is as much physical as it is mental, which seems obvious, right? But I think a lot of techniques that people use to get them ready to speak publicly are mental techniques. There are some physical ones, right? So if you can actually figure out what your good starting posture is for speaking, for me, is like engaging my hands, opening my chest up, hearing the sound of my voice before I hop on, it grounds me. So for me, that works really well, and starting slow. So I could be really nervous mentally, but if you get into if you train your body to be in a good posture physically, and that is your kind of excellent speaking posture, it's going to set you up better than not doing that. So that's helped a ton. You could probably make a ton of Mamba references back to that, but I won't. You can do that.
The thing that I'm going to take away from this is you have been intentional about being better. It wasn't just, I'm going to show up and I'm going to drop 30 today. It was, that means you're actually in the gym doing the work. The work is getting the speaking coach, being intentional about communication, being intentional about how you look. And so I think that's where I've used to get it wrong, where some of the best leaders, I remember Raj at Bloomreach, he would come up and he would record a customer thing or something for the website, and he would do it in one take. And I remember just sitting there being like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. But I imagine that he was at home or wherever in his office, and he was practicing that over and over again until it became natural. And so it's not this, let's get lucky. It's an intentional focus to be better. So I love hearing that. It's
Raj is an excellent speaker.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. Some people are like, they can, they're like Good Will Hunting. They can just play. They just have that gift. But
you're right. He might actually be that. He just made it so natural. I used to be just dumbfounded by it, to be honest.
Yeah. But I mean, even when you have talent, like I've talked to, like I do and ask the great speakers that I meet, like Ryan Longfield, ex-CRO at Gong. I asked him how he got good. Russell Banson, who was like our marketing leader, Udi. These are all guys that I went up and asked, how did you get better? And even if they didn't take classes, they got their reps in. They found opportunities to get in front of people and just went for it. So, it's like chicken or the egg. Like, do you get better so you have the courage to go do it? Or do you say, I'm just going to do it and I get better in the process? And I think a lot of them who want to get better, they just have the courage to raise their hand and say, hey, I'll go and speak at this thing. And then you fail a couple of times, you're like, I can't look that bad again. And then you're inspired to get better. So that, for me, it's been a combo of both. Sorry, the second thing I was going to mention, there's an investment in skill sets is, I think a lot of people in strategy are really good at the strategy of it all, right? They go and do the analyses, they figure out the right recommendations, but then there's connective tissue between, I think, a good strategist and a great strategist, which is, can you communicate the strategy in a way that makes sense and have people actually want to take action against it? So I knew I couldn't work, and your teams work so hard trying to get to insight, but you don't want that fruit to die on a vine because you couldn't communicate in a way that could compel people to take action against it. So I took another course. I took the power writing course by one of my first million podcast guys, Sean Puri. And it was like a 4-week Zoom course that we took. And it just taught you how to like communicate really effectively, especially in written format. So that's what I invested in.
That was what I was going to ask you, because I obviously see you on LinkedIn and it's crisp, it's clear. I use ChatGPT and I literally write edit for clarity, conciseness, because I don't have that. But you also were intentional on being better with your written communication as well. And what was the course again? Just in case somebody wants to.
I don't think he's offered anymore. It's called power writing.
Okay.
But
there's something similar out there that
it's on Maven. I mean, people should check it out. I think there's something similar, but I mean, the biggest takeaway I got from all that is I think people put too much in themselves in their writing, as in you write sometimes to make yourself seem smart. The more you can put yourself in the shoes of your audience and like reverse engineer what needs to go on a page and literally try to cut out 80% of it, like you're probably on the right path.
Let me dig there actually. So I think your online presence on LinkedIn actually builds your credibility, and we all learn from you. I think that's becoming a flywheel for you. When you're making a post, are you just going to type, push send? How much time are you spending on crafting that message? Depending on it, of course, it could vary, but are you just type, send, or is this a long thought out process?
I love and hate this question. Like, I would love this part to be more private than public, but the embarrassing truth is like I stare at a blank page every morning. Like you have to set a time and say, I'm going to squeeze something out no matter what. And then the more you can divorce yourself from the outcome, like, is it going to be a good post or not, the better. Because if you think about it from a long enough perspective, you're just trying to get better at writing. And the process of it, even if it sucks, at least your thinking is documented. You can refer back to it. I love reading my own college essays, not for any other reason, but like, wow, that's how I thought about stuff back then. That's how I structured my thinking. And it's fun to just see like how bad that was compared to where I am now. And I'm sure in 10 years, I'll look back on my writing now and be like, wow, that was terrible. But the process is long. You start with like something you want to communicate that you think would be valuable to people. That's your nugget, right? And then from there, I used to write in a way that like, I want to talk about the process of how I got there. But if you think about the people consuming, they're like, they don't care about that. You're putting yourself in that process now. So I just say, let me get out of the way completely. How can I communicate the things that they need to know to take action in the crispest way possible? And I follow two rules. One is I have to take out anything that's extraneous. Like adjectives are usually not worth it. There are going to be some words you want to put in there that to just make yourself seem smart, but there's probably like an 8th grade version of that vocab that works better. Write like you think, write like you normally speak. And the last rule is, and I actually learned this from the power writing course, which is every line you write should make the reader want to read the next line.
Yeah.
And if that line doesn't, then you're done. You're done writing. There's no need to write anymore.
That's a great call because you actually, it feels, I don't want to call it cliffhanger, but you have a sentence and I'm scroll because I think you do good spacing, right? I've noticed that where I'm waiting for the next line of your writing and that's suspense building. That's you're intentional about that.
Yeah, the My First Million guys, Sam Parr, he calls it, can you make them fall down the slope? So you basically want to build that momentum line by line. And it's a good rule because it stops you from writing too much. Because if this line doesn't support the next line, then I've just stopped that line. I'm done writing. There's nothing more value to add to the page. And with attention spans the way it is, you have to get in and get out.
I'm going to take that one up. I've been using ChatGPT a lot to try to convey what's going on in the podcast. And then I read it back and I'm like, I don't even want to.
Yeah, well, I want to offer something there. So I think all these, I put all of them because I, like everybody else, want to be lazy and like squeeze these things out in the most efficient way possible. They're really good for overcoming the blank page challenge. If you have an idea, just have it massage it into something. I'm a better refiner than I am like an inventor, quoting the heuristic. So it helps me overcome that in a lot of ways. And then once I get going, I can get going.
Okay.
But this is the thing I love talking about this. One last thing I'll offer on this, which is on the blank page thing, there's the desire to actually make everything you write on the page to be the final form. And the best way to think about it is in two ways. One, you got to think about it as like a sandbox. Like the box right now is empty. You want to make a sandcastle. You got to dump sand into the sandbox, which means just write. Don't worry about how good it is. Once you have everything out there, then you can start stacking the sand in a way that actually, forms the castle that you want, right? So you just have to get it on the page that like once you get going, it really works. And the second thing that really helps me is creativity as a thing. You just have to show up and do it. There's this concept of like the creativity faucet, which means the good stuff's in there, but you have a lot of bad stuff that's in the way. So you have to really literally write down all the bad things. Just get it out. It's going to be terrible. Suffer through all that really, really crappy sentences, ideas. But like within all that, you can start constructing what you're actually trying to get to. If you apply like what I talked about in the refining and trying to make sure every line contributes to the next, you'll have something compelling.
Yeah. Another key takeaway for me and hopefully people listening is it's not something that just happens, but you have to start. You have to put yourself in the arena. People like you make it seem so natural. So I think that's where other people get imposter syndrome. It's like, well, Sonny just naturally communicates perfectly. Sonny has these compelling and intriguing LinkedIn posts. And Sonny's got this career journey that's amazing. And it's just because Sonny's amazing because you naturally showed up that way when we worked well together. But to look behind, when you open the curtain up, you have been really working hard and intentional to be better every single day. And I think that's a lot of the point of this podcast too. That's very good for people to hear. It's work.
I've been writing for 2 years or trying to write on LinkedIn for 2 years. And before that, I've had a very good friend, a friend that you know, Iban Landabaso, in my ear about writing for 4 years. So I dragged my feet for 2 years that he started telling me that I should write. Finally did it.
What was he telling you to do? He told you that he thinks that you'd be good at it, or what was he trying to get you to do?
He was just trying to get me to write online. And he's not wrong. I think it's a underrated way of building your career and just like your luck in life. And he encouraged me to write for the same reason of like, it would be a shame to go through life and like not be able to reflect on how you used to think. And I was like, okay, worst case of this is that you have a bunch of your writing, but you can actually like time travel back when you look at that, right? Because you get put into the frame of how you used to think. So I was like, all right, worst case, I get to document like my thinking at the time. But two, you're going to get better if you just keep writing. But starting was really hard. I dragged my feet for so long. I have another friend, Sumeru Chatterjee, who, when I made my first post, on LinkedIn, there's so much resistance. I literally texted him. I was, hey, you've been doing this for a while. What's the best time to post? He recognized it as resistance because I was trying to find a way out because I thought I missed out on like the best time frame to post in a day. And he just goes, hey, post yours. I'm going to post mine. And that kicked everything off.
Just freaking do it. Just fucking do it. Stop overthinking it. Go and just do it. That's what this all comes down to, and not overthinking it and getting frozen. And that's the one I keep saying. I see you show up every single day making great posts, and I never really understood, and I think for people watching and listening, you've been intentional, you put yourself out there, and you just do the work. And so just stop overthinking it and start doing it if you're listening. All right, let me do a pivot. Let's think about big changes, big challenges. When you're facing something massive, a transformation, unexpected, massive, big challenge. Let's think about, everybody's talking about it now, but you have to scale. So scaling your operations or completely pivoting your strategy. When facing something big, what is your first step? How do you literally think about how do you approach something big? And I think we kind of talked about this with your consulting, but how do you tackle things that are big head on?
Yeah, I'd probably offer 3 things. One that's like super personal to me. But the first one is like, you got to have a certain degree of confidence that nothing's that big. If you spend the time to break it down into what's the next thing I can do to tackle this. Things seem really challenging where it's like, man, from where I am to where I need to get to is super intimidating. But what's the first step? If I reverse engineer how to get there, what's the first step I can take and just keep doing that action?
Yeah.
Just think what's like the next best thing, but what's the next thing to do? Just like make it really simple for yourself to get going. I think the second thing, did I say 3? I meant 2. The second thing that's most important to me is what should I be unlearning that's going to help me get there? So like once you assess what's required to get to the next thing, I think the way the world is right now, you have to always unlearn and relearn. There are things that you might have identified with that like served you really well in a previous role. That's probably going to hold you back. That pride's going to hold you back and like become this new thing that's going to help you in your new role. So I mean, a good example for me is I was so used to being like individual contributor for a large part of my career. I now manage teams, and the desire to jump in and just do, I think it's very, very inherent with everybody who wants to get things done. But if you think about the long term, which is like building a team that's independent and self-sustaining and where they shine, unlearning or holding back that instinct to just jump in, help solution, I think is massive. And it's really hard. It's very counter to your nature of all things that got you where you are. So that's been a big journey for me, like how to become a better manager, a better leader. A lot of things are new to me, but it's not about, hey, how can I fit what I used to be good at to what this requires? It's about like, what can I unlearn that I used to really identify with that I can now have to go really change my identity around what makes me great at my job. So that's a huge part of it. And, Gong's been great in like investing in a lot of like managerial development things. And I think the biggest thing I've learned is just when you're in any situation, when you're trying to solution on behalf of whoever you're trying to help, you're hurting them.
That's something I struggle with. And I've been IC and leader as well. And I just want to get shit done. But not even the long game, the medium game, you're hurting yourself across the board. And it's really tough to hit the brakes though. It's tough for me at least.
It's really hard. Especially this happens in life too. I think it's this happens in life where you hear people going through problems, you just want to help them. But sometimes people don't really take action unless it's something they think they feel like they came up with themselves. Nobody wants to be told what to do.
Yeah.
So if you can help somebody get there, and it may not be the version you think is best, but it's something they can authentically go and do, that's what they need. So that's been huge for me. Like, how do I unlearn habits that did make me successful and that take on a new identity because of the thing I'm trying to solve or the initiative I'm undertaking?
That's a very good call. You mentioned good, and as a leader, what does good look like for a top performer? Any role, how do you identify that person is really good? How that person's great? What does that look like for you?
It's been a hard lesson for me too. It's the same kind of frame, I'd say. I think a person that takes radical accountability for themselves, I think is huge. That I think that extends in a lot of different directions, right? It's about showing up with like some ideas for what you want to do and not. I'll back up for a second. I learned that the most when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next after customer success. I thought at the time that I've proven myself, I've got this track record of performance, and I really wanted the people around me, my leaders who knew me well, to tell me what I should be doing next. And it was a really painful year of like, hey, I want something more. You know me. Why can't you just tell me where you should put me?
Take me along. Let's go.
Exactly. I was like, hey, you know what's best because you're seen at your level. I don't know if it's because they have this wisdom or they simply, nobody can really do that for you. But I struggled for like a year trying to figure that out. And then it flipped for me and I'm like, all right, let me own this completely. Let me go do a process deduction. Go ahead.
When that hit you, was that you recognizing that? There wasn't an Yvonne or somebody telling you, Sonny, you got to own it? Because we've say this before. We've heard own your career. What was the light switch for you to be like, oh, I actually do need to own my career?
Yeah, I think all the good leaders in your life, they'll try to tell you it in different ways. But if you're not ready to hear it, it's a cop-out. Like either you're not telling me because you don't want to tell me, or like you're trying to Mr. Miyagi me to something. Nobody enjoys that either. I think for me, I was just so tired of feeling crappy. Man, every day, like, I think the lesson for me is like, man, you're putting power in your life into somebody else's hands. I was like, why don't you just own it? Like, there's nothing out there for you that you currently like. So why don't you try and create it? And that was like where it kind of shifted for me. I'm so tired of complaining internally.
Yeah.
And I was like, am I really not smart to figure this out for myself? So what that looked like owning it was like literally setting up time with everybody. It included like jobs that I thought I knew, roles that I didn't know what they did, but like I just wanted to understand what that role looked like to try to kind of narrow down what I wanted to do. And in that process, I met like the boss of the team that I joined eventually, Omer Krugman. He led the value engineering team. And I didn't know I wanted to do that. It was just through meeting him and him telling me what he was supposed to do, which is like helping customers tell a story through data. I was like, whoa, that's perfect. But I didn't know I want to do that. It was this journey of trying to figure it out and owning it, literally setting up 30-minute meetings like twice a week with new people, just trying to understand what they did, why they joined Gong, and what their goal was when they joined. And just that process helped me a lot. So the radical accountability, I think, is a sign of somebody who wants to get better.
Where does that come from, though? I'm wondering if there's some transferable skill here, because I know for me, I pretend like I'm not competitive, but I want to be the best HR business partner. I want everybody to be like, that was the best person I ever worked with. This might come from some childhood trauma somewhere, but like there's something that drives me where nobody has to tell me, but I want to be better.
Yeah.
And I haven't quite pinpointed for me where that comes from. And like I said, there's probably a lot of factors, but really there's just something within that's like, I have to learn. I have to talk to the Sonnies of the world. For you, where do you think that drive for you comes from? Is there a magical place where it comes from?
Yeah. Oh, it's going to be a little controversial, but I'll say, I used to believe, there's a very common notion that smart people tend to be unhappy because they see through the bullshit and all that kind of stuff, right? And I heard this quote that I think is from Naval Ravikant. He goes, if you're so smart, why can't you figure out how to be happy? It just kind of recontextualizes the whole thing. And I think smart people like to think they're smart. If they can't figure out what it is, then that probably means you're not as smart as you think you are. So that kind of hubris, I think, is in a very backwards way helpful. And I think for me, it's like, hey, I believe my abilities. I've done well so far. There's nothing actively set up against me for me to succeed. So if we follow that logic, it must be you. So really finding out the things that are blocking yourself.
Yeah.
Do that. And for me, I was like, well, okay, I've assessed everything. The current kind of promotion paths that are out there, I don't like. So I have to go create it. I can't expect somebody else to do it for me.
Are you solving for money? Are you solving for always going up and to the right in your career? Are you solving for, I want to be the industry leader? What really deep down is in driving all of this self-reflection and improvement?
Yeah, I say this a lot to like all my leaders, which is like, we all want money to a certain extent, but I think that follows your impact. I have two things every time. Like I want to do things I'm curious about and where I'm uniquely suited to make a good impact. So if a role checks those two boxes, then I'm for it. So it's kind of looked like a bunch of different things, but that's generally the heuristic that I follow. And that changes, right? Like that changes all the time. It's been a 2-year expiry on any role I take on since I've kind of adopted this.
Is that something intentional that you said, this is how I'm going to look at how did you get here? It was just, actually, I looked back and realized that was my 2 operating principles, or were you intentional starting way back at Bloomreach, or how did you come up with this?
Yeah, I think people tend to figure this out once they have enough years underneath their belt in their career, because you start looking backwards on like what are the themes and where you're not necessarily where you're making the most money, but like where the happiest, where you show up and man, today I'm excited.
Yeah.
And you need that, right? Like you can make a lot of money, but I've talked to so many people that were like, they've turned down really high paying roles because they know they weren't going to be happy. And that fulfillment looks different. For me, is it interesting? And what about my experiences and the way I am? Am I uniquely suited to do this thing really well? And that's looked like all sorts of stuff. For my current gig, I do this data thing, but also manage RFPs at Gong. And that's a very unique combination of scopes within one role.
Right.
And I was like, I can take this on. This seems interesting. So that typically looks like something that's new that hasn't been done before. Like that we didn't have RFP function at Gong before. So I was like, hey, let me try to figure this out. So that's been fun.
And then you show up better. You show up differently when you do have that, when you're coming from that lens versus I'm just doing it because they're going to pay me. And hopefully they're going to give me another level to move up to. And this is it. Yeah, that's a good call. All right, let's move on. We have 12 minutes and I have 1,000 more questions. So let me fast forward a little bit. All right, let's move to the next segment, game day rituals. Let's talk about the day-to-day habits that you do to be successful every day. Walk me through a typical day in your life. I know that you and I have been working for a couple of weeks to try to get you scheduled. There's a lot going on in your life. How do you structure your time to maximize how you're focused and how you have impact?
I wish I had a better answer for you where people are like, this is, I program my mornings to look a certain way. I'm not like that. I try to do it. I try to block out time to either write or just strategize and plan and do like work. I think it's so easy to fall into this not habit, but like this situation when you're like back to back with meetings. And honestly, if you're like a people leader, when you have a big team, you can't help it. You have to be there for your people, which is probably also a reason why I've like traditionally stayed with smaller teams, because I do need that time to like think and strategize and actually do stuff to move the team forward. But yeah, I mean, I would say there's nothing that consistent besides I force myself to write every morning. If I can squeeze something out, I feel good about the thing I did for that day. So I try to get the hardest thing out of the way. And then after that, trying to be conscientious about how I schedule my day. I don't.
Are you scheduling a day out? Are you scheduling a week out? How far out are you trying to plan your life and your existence at Gong?
I think I'm lucky enough where I have phases of work. Like when we have, there's a lot of times where we finish a big analysis and I have to go contextualize that analysis with a lot of different people to make sure that what we found actually makes sense. So there'll be 2-week phases where like I'm back to back with meetings. And there's other times where it's not like that, where I can actually be really intentional about how I want to schedule my calendar. I think the more I take back on customer facing stuff, I have to be a lot more diligent about kind of carving out time where I just get to work and do stuff. This is all to say, like, I think time with your team and customers is super, super valuable, but just don't fall in a trap of, oh, I have a free block. Let me go and just book time over it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then digging in there a little bit, are you then putting time to be intentional about being strategic? That's what everybody says. I need somebody that's more strategic. It's a bunch of buzzwords, but are you intentionally taking time to be able to think, have that deeper thinking, be strategic, on top of course, just tactically executing? How are you making sure you're taking that time, or are you just kind of letting it happen?
Yeah, I love this question because it's helped me a ton. I heard this concept of 1 awesome hour on a podcast somewhere, but it stuck with me. So when you're an IC, or even if you're a manager, you're typically just doing your role, right? You're being a CSM, you're being a salesperson. And if you can carve out 1 hour a week, like literally just 1 hour to think about the things that you're struggling with or challenged with and trying to solve that. So the concept is like, don't work in the business, work on the business. Then you can actually do a lot for your career, because you're the ones like, oh, I noticed this issue. I went and solved it. I'm also assuming that because I'm experiencing this as an IC, my peers are also experiencing it. I've taken the time to go and solve it. That'll elevate you so much more quickly. But I think this general concept of like, if you're an operator where you don't have like a very senior title, you're typically working in the business. You're doing your role. And if we're all being honest, you have leftover time that you're probably invest in working on the business, but you typically take that time and you just work on in the business to make sure that your next day is easier.
Do the next task and
Exactly.
move on.
So instead of doing that, instead of just trying to like make your work week shorter, take that hour that you have in that day and just trying to work on the business, be it solving a big challenge that your team is you're facing, or just identifying, hey, I think we could go in this direction based on the fact that I've had the time to like take a step back and look at what we're doing. I think that helps a ton. And the more I can implement that for my teams, the better. I haven't done that in a while. Like as an IC, that was ultra effective.
Yeah.
Now when you're a leader, you got to be thinking like that anyways, but there's probably still some benefit to that left in that tactic.
The practical part is you said it was 1 hour a week. It's not 1 hour a day. But
we talked about this before. If you can hide behind really big goals, make it so doable. You can do an hour. That could look like 2 30-minute segments in a week. That could look like 1 hour at a time. That could look at 15-minute segments at a time. I'd probably recommend the hour just because it takes time to actually context switch into the right mode. But you could jack that up to 2 hours if you want. But just carving out that time, because like if you don't, your calendar just gets filled up on a daily basis. I think that's super helpful.
That's really practical. I'm going to actually try to implement it. I try to time box, and I think that's very important to do that as well. All right, let's move on. Level up advice. We're going to give some more advice here. That's what we've been trying to get, but let's be a little bit more direct with that. What's been your biggest failure in your career so far, and what did you do to help yourself grow from it? I know this is very vulnerable, so maybe you don't want to talk about it, but I do think there's a lot of value in talking about people that are great aren't doing things perfectly all the time. And so that's the point of this question.
I mean, hopefully this speaks to your audience, and I'm sure it does. I mean, a lot of people that probably tune into this, they do it because they want to get better at something.
Mm-hmm.
And that typically means they've been used to performing really well, which I think at every turn of your career, you're going to realize you're not as good as you think you are. And I don't have one big failure, but I can look back at the times where I've suffered from the failure. And it's because I wasn't ready to admit that I need to do something different. And I think the quicker you get there for yourself, the better.
How do you get there? Was it somebody telling you? Was it a performance review that was like, you're trash? How does it for you? How do you recognize that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit it. I was a very okay consultant at Deloitte. Like we have reviews, and I forgot what the system was, but I was like firmly middle of the pack. And if you got into Deloitte or any consulting firm, you got in over other people that applied, so you think you're hot shit, right? And you get there like, oh, at this level, I need to get better. And I think along with admitting that you're not as great is also an invitation to figure out what you're uniquely good at. So at every turn, wow, I'm not good at this thing. Is it the environment I want to be in? If yes, what is my angle to stand out? What is my unique thing about what I can offer that will help me stand out? And how can I double down on that? And how can I like really make this thing that people associate me with, right?
And that's sitting down, just thinking about it, getting a notepad, like you said, the blank piece of paper, and just taking some time to think about it.
Yeah.
You're active and intentional about that. I love that.
The one thing, so that's a big thing. I think the one thing that anybody who's managed me has ever heard, they've all heard me say the same thing. I am deeply fearful of my blind spots. And I define blind spots as something that's obvious to other people that you're not doing that you could be doing better. It's got to be something obvious, right? Because I mean, I think we're all critical enough to actually notice a lot of things that other people that might not notice that you want to work on, which is fine, which is good. You're covered there, right? Where you're not covered is your own biases on where you think you're actually really good, where you're actually not so good. So I encourage everybody, all my leaders, people around me, they tell me my blind spots because you truly can't see those, right? And when it's obvious to other people, it's probably something that could help you a ton. So that's helped me a ton. And
so you're actively asking people on a semi-regular basis, obviously naturally in the conversation, but you're going on and asking that question and not just during review time, right?
Yeah, I'll ask that during review time. But where I ask it the most, and this will get annoying because I think everybody does jiu-jitsu, talks about jiu-jitsu, but in jiu-jitsu, at the every like hard rolling session, I'll ask the person I just sparred with, hey, I have a lot to work on, but what's the most obvious to you that you think I need to work on? And that's helped me really up level like every session that I'm in. So yeah.
Last, what is one piece of advice that you would give your younger self if you could go back in time?
I think it's that concept of like radical accountability for your career. It's hard to get to, but it's so valuable. How I arrived at it is because I'm not a natural, I don't complain that much verbally. I might do it, like I'm a big internalizer, but one day you'll realize, man, I'm complaining so much, but there's nothing that's been like put against me. And if I'm as smart as I think I am, I should go and try to figure this out for myself. And that's my self-talk typically when I run into challenges, because again, I think every smart person wants to think they're smart, and it's up to you to prove it on a daily basis. Yeah.
All right, we're gonna close this thing out. This has been amazing, Sonny. Yeah. So we're gonna do our final segment. This is called the 2-minute drill. Just rapid fire questions. See if we can a last little tidbit from you. What's your favorite book or resource that really has shaped your career or your life? Book or resource. It could be a podcast. It could be.
Yeah. The book that comes to mind most readily is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, FBI hostage negotiator. That teaches you like how to actually navigate life in a way that everybody's happy. So like, and also get what you want as well. So that's a great book. I recommend that to anybody. That's all I can think of right now, to be honest.
Perfect. I'm going to go get it then. Is there a quote or a mantra that keeps you grounded and motivated?
Ooh, the one I would like I like a lot recently is be where your feet are.
Yeah.
That one's hard to embody, but like when you get really, really wrapped up and anxious because you're thinking about the future or you're wrapped up in like what you got to do. But if you're where your feet are, all you can think about is like, what's the next thing to do? And that takes away a lot of the scare factor of like these big tasks or like all the things you have to get to.
Fall in love with the process. Be where your feet are. I love that. Looking ahead, is there an ambitious goal for you, your team? It could be career-wise, but it could also be personal. Is there one ambitious goal that you're looking to accomplish for 2025?
I don't, to be honest. I'm not great at goals. I know the things I want to do on a daily basis, and that's what I was trying to stick to. Let's continue writing, continue trying to do something new and different. No, I'm taking on 2 new scopes at work. I want to look back in here and be like, hey, you did that well, and you did that in a way that's like very Sunny-like. But yeah, I mean, for me, every day it's writing and jujitsu.
Kill the day. That's the goal. I love that. All right, Sonny, this has been amazing. I really appreciate you. I have tidbits, and like I said, I'm going to break this down because I think there's a lot of jewels. I think the main thing was accountability. It's showing up and just actually doing the work, and that's being in the arena, and it's being intentional. I think that was the thing. You have been intentional about being better, about growing, about being the best at what you're doing. And so there's a lot here. I appreciate you. Let's go get some.
This was fun.
Here. This has been amazing.
You're good at this, man.
Well, I have to keep doing it. Let's recording ourselves, and
you made me sound good. I'll be honest, I was a little intimidated. I was like, man, I can't bring the heat for an hour. But you made that easy.
And we could do it for another hour. Thank you, man. This has been amazing. I appreciate you. This has been the Level Up Podcast, or How to Be Better at Your Job. I am Brian Bell.
Subscribe, people.
Sonny Huang, this is amazing.